The Old Gold Club, powered by Wolverhampton Building Supplies, with Mikey Burrows and Chris Iwelumo.
Welcome along to the Old Gold Club. I'm Mikey Burrows. Alongside me, as ever, is Chris Iwelumo. And our guest this week spent 4 years at Molineux, making more than 150 appearances and scoring 39 goals. Welcome to the club, Donald Ralph Goodman, a.k.a. The Don.
It's my dad's fault. West Indian tradition. Turn the firstborn's, turn his name round. So my dad was called Ralph Donald.
Nice.
So I was always going to be a Donald Ralph. Swiftly on. My sister's called Michelle Ralph as well. No, she's not.
It's great to have you here. Normally when we say to people when they come on this program, it's kind of, good to be back and to see the old place. But you're here quite a lot.
Reasonable amount, yeah.
In fact, we were here for a recent game against Chelsea that we actually marked the anniversary on that day of you signing for the club, because I found the photo to show you of a very young-looking you alongside Graham Taylor and John
DeWolf. Yeah. We signed on the same day, John DeWolf and I. Became great pals. Lived in the Mount Hotel for about 3 or 4 months over Christmas. It was good fun.
It's a good time to be joining the club at the time.
Well, it was. If I go back to my days at West Bromwich Albion, they'd got relegated to League One ultimately. And as a player, Chris will tell you, you just aspire to play at the highest level that you possibly can. And certainly I was banging in a lot of goals in a very average team at the time. And then I went to Sunderland for just under £1 million, again, 1990, which is a lot of money, thinking that they would tick the boxes for me and get me to the Premier League. And again, for 3 years there, I think I was top scorer every season, but we weren't anywhere really near. Although I had a fantastic time up there. And then Graham Taylor came in, and I'm not being funny, but we had Tony Daly on the right wing, Steve Froggatt on the left wing, Steve Bull, David Kelly was sitting, I think, 3rd or 4th in the league. This was it. This was where it was at for me. So
on that, it's a no-brainer for you then.
No-brainer, yeah.
Right. So what about the fact you just said David Kelly, Steve Bull? You know the quality of them. Obviously, you're on fire. You finished top goal scorer the last 3 seasons.
I think
competition.
You back yourself, don't you? You back yourself. You have to back yourself. Graham pioneered actually that diagonal ball to a wide player. So for the first 6 months of my Wolves career, I actually played on the right wing. Tony Daly got injured, unfortunately. So he put me on the right wing, and I was quite a weapon really with that diagonal ball and knocking balls down for Bully and Ned. They scored a few goals off little knockdowns and things like that. And so he did it first at Aston Villa, if you remember, with big sticks, Ian Ormonroyd. So it was a tool that we employed, and it was quite successful, and I didn't mind that.
Honestly, you didn't mind not being the main man scoring the goals?
Well, no. At the end of the day, it's about being part of a team. It's not about, and if you believe in what you're doing, and if you believe that the manager and the team will get you to where you want to be, you do it. There are numerous players that play out of their preferred position. Even now in modern football, you get asked to play in different roles, and I was perfectly okay with that. The following season, obviously, I then was put down the middle, and I think by the end of October I'd scored 13. I think I finished with 20, something like that. But unfortunately, we all know what happened in the intermittent period. It didn't go well. We'd lost the playoffs to Bolton, which was heartbreaking. I'd say, in purely footballing terms, it was probably, I'll say probably because there's only one other thing that would rival it, but it was probably the saddest I'd ever been on a football pitch, sat in the middle of Burndon Park with a little tear streaming down my cheek because Bolton had mugged us out of a playoff final spot.
Well, we had obviously David Kelly in
his head
doing the programme. Yeah. I mean, he's very philosophical about that now, because we put it to him about VAR if it was there in the place at the time and stuff, and he was kind of very didn't want it, did he? He was kind of like, well, it happened, that was football, and I moved on, and he kind of accepted that he probably shouldn't have shook John McGinley's hand straight afterwards in front of the referee. That might have altered it and stuff. But for you guys, that group of players, it was surely the moment when it was your time. Football's funny like that, isn't it?
That's what I came for, and felt like it should have been. So really, let's not beat about the bush here. With the quality at our disposal, that group of players not getting to the Premier League, despite the fact that we're in the playoffs. I think we're in the playoffs twice in my 4 seasons here. Underachieved. We underachieved because we had the ability to be at the very, very top of that league. And we didn't do it. There were lots of different factors involved. We were pleasing on the eye. We scored a lot of goals, but we conceded too many for a team to be sort of certainly challenging for automatic promotion. And when I say that, I don't just blame the defenders. I'm a believer that you attack as a team and you defend as a team. So the buck stops with you all.
Because do you view it then on when you didn't get that promotion playoff final that you arguably deserved in that Bolton game? Did that have that knock-on impact because you hadn't achieved what you felt was yours? What then happened in the following years was a direct consequence.
Well, certainly, let's be clear, there are no divine rights. So hadn't achieved what we felt was ours. You've got to earn it ultimately. So you don't feel that it's yours until you've earned it. And we didn't earn it. We clearly just fell short by the skin of our teeth. And when we only beat them 2-1 out here, and it literally, and we hit the woodwork 5 times. Shilton came out of retirement at the age of 75 and played a stormer, didn't he? So there were all kinds of reasons, but ultimately, history shows you that we just failed, and that I have learned and I have watched teams the season after losing the playoffs, whether it be semi-final or whether it be final, have hangovers and really struggle, and that's what happened to us. And by sort of October, football's a sport of fine margins. I remember I hit the crossbar down at the bottom end with literally the last kick of the game, or it was a diving header actually, and it bounced into the ground up and crashed off the bar, and that was Graham Taylor's last game in charge. So it's that, if that goes in,
small margins.
He may still have stayed as the manager. And in the history of Wolves, one of the most catastrophic, greatest mistakes that this football club ever made was sacking Graham Taylor. And I'll put that on record right here, right now. And he went and proved it, because when he left here, he went to Watford, who were in League One. He got them promoted into the Championship, and then the very next season, he got them promoted into the Premier League. And I am convinced if he'd have stayed the manager at Wolverhampton Wanderers, that he would have got Wolves into the Premier League a lot sooner than they managed to do it.
I'll ask you, were you given a fair crack? Because, like you say, 20 goals in 52 appearances, playing up the middle. Ian Roberts comes in. There's then Mixu Patalainen, Dougie Friedman, Robbie Keane.
Yeah, lots
over the years. These players coming through. Were you given a fair crack? Because, like you say, you got played up the middle, you scored the goals. Then you're playing outside, you're making assists for others. Your job was the goal getter. Hardest thing to do in football, score goals done.
Yeah, again, it's one of those, isn't it? I was comfortable playing in a wide role. Sometimes you can be too flexible, I suppose, for your own good. There are players that I've played with that can literally play anywhere on a football pitch, And every now and again, it's to their disadvantage that they can, because they're seen as that utility player rather than as a brilliant midfielder or a brilliant right back or a brilliant whatever it may be. I don't think that ever really applied to me, if I'm honest, Chris. I still managed to get my share of goals from the wider areas over the course of time. I still enjoyed playing with all those characters that that you've named, and we had another playoff campaign. Where we failed against Crystal Palace this time, a couple of years later. Unfortunately, I was injured for the away leg. Managed to get just not 100% fit, but fit enough to play here, and we only managed to beat them 2-1 when we needed to beat them 3-1. So again, fine lines.
It is that thing though that I was talking to Looms about this beforehand, that every time 95-96 when Taylor goes and Mark McGee comes in, you are top scorer, you David Kelly had left because you'd taken that spot up top. It seemed to be your time. And then every single time it seemed to be, whether it was Mixu Patalainen, whether it was Dougie Friedman, whether it was Ewan Roberts coming in, it's almost like, from an outside point of view, it's like, well, why not just leave you in? Do you know what I mean? Why do we keep bringing these players in all the time?
Yeah, managers are paid to make decisions, aren't they? And back in those days particularly, there was also an element of, if you were out of the team through suspension or through injury, and the person that went in and took your place played well, they got the shirt, haven't they? So, it's hard for them to be dropped. Although I do remember Brett Angel, when I was at Walsall, scored it. He must be the only player to score a hat-trick. So we'd secured our playoff spot at Walsall. And as a 35-year-old, Ray Graydon rested me for the last game of the season away at Northampton. Brett Angel came in, scored a hat-trick and was subsequently dropped. So, so it is one of those things. I mean, ultimately we prevailed, so that was the right decision.
Do you think part of bringing all those players in, though, was... Because you mentioned to us before that you and Mark McGee didn't have the greatest of relationships, did you?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a, it wasn't a great relationship at times. It was, again, it was a strong dressing room. We had lots of strong characters within that dressing room, and sometimes, you questioned, and it's only because you were desperate for the club to get the right results, to win games of football and win enough games of football, and it'll take you to where you want to be. And we were there were periods when I was here where that just wasn't happening. And so as a senior pro, or somebody that had a bit of a voice, you would chuck your two penneth in, wouldn't you? And I'm not sure at times how well that went down. But having said all of that, whenever Mark McGee put me in a football team, I said it before, I would give 100%, and there wouldn't be a fan sat in any stadium in this country that would see me playing for Mark McGee and have any idea that he and I didn't get on, because it simply didn't work that way in those days. Might be a tiny bit different now for a variety of different reasons, but so despite the fact that we weren't best friends. It didn't stop us from having a working relationship.
Yeah, that's what I was going to touch on there. Is it? Did that make you have to do that a little bit extra? I know you worked very hard anyway, but that must have been very difficult. The manager, he might favour another striker because of that relationship. Because, like you say, you're a people person. Man management is so important. If sometimes you aren't even talking, you can still go out and do your job professionally. But you're thinking then, he doesn't really want me to succeed because he wants this player. The competition that he was bringing in. Is that not difficult?
I can't ever recall having that train of thought.
Right.
There were times, obviously, that I was left out, where, in my opinion, I shouldn't have been left out. Mm-hmm. But I think if you go back through the annals of time, you'll find that I wasn't left out for very long, rightly or wrongly. I was never left out for a real extended period of time. The only extended periods of times I had out of a first 11, thankfully, was if injury had been a problem. So, for all of that, I think because of that, I didn't really harbour those thoughts, Chris, if I'm honest with you.
Because you know Mark McGee, don't you? You've played with...
Yeah, but like you say, I think as Don was saying earlier, I think you have to evolve with the game. The players change, managers change. It's a must. I think for me, I know that when I came to Wolves, Sylvain Ebanks-Blake had more. He could have more poor games and stay in. Yeah. And the other three would rotate: me, Sam Vokes, Andy Keogh. And I remember one of the games, I was speaking to Mick McCarthy just a couple of weeks ago, and I was running. It was after my Scotland miss. I was playing away at Watford, and I'm doing all Sylves running, and Mick's hammering me saying, "Tell that lazy whatever." I'm saying, "It's all right if he gets a goal, I've done my job." And it nearly killed me. I'm getting rested. I'm training on Thursday because the manager's letting me. I'm running myself into the ground, but I just felt that I had two. I'm sitting top goal scorer. I think I've scored. Well, I know I'd scored 15 goals in 12. I had 2 games. Birmingham here at home, it was a draw. Sylvain got the goal. I got marked out the game. I was on fire. Done. We were QPR away. I was poor. Mm-hmm. Gaffer drops me. I remember he came in, Looms, in the office, and I've went in and I had the chat with him. He says, Andy Keogh got put in. I'm saying, I'm your top goal scorer, Gaffer. He says, he trains and Keogh was brilliant every day. When else can I put him in? But Sylvan had that little bit more, that he could go 3, 4,
Basically,
5
what he's
games.
saying, Don, is that you did all the running for Steve Bull. He did all the running for Sylvan, and you did all the running for Steve
Well,
Bull.
no, I would have to correct you there really. I remember we played in the FA Cup at White Hart Lane. I think it was the 4th round. It was the back end of January, so I think it was the 4th round. And we were being marked by, I think it was Gary Mabbott and Sol Campbell, Bully and I. And we just did what Bully and I did. We could be having the worst game. Touch might be off, might be, ball bouncing off or whatever. We could, but those defenders would know they'd been in a game.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. So, and Gary Mabbott in an interview, we drew 1-1, by the way, that day. I did manage to nick the goal, just for the record. What was really pleasing was that Gary Mabbott, who had played week in, week out in the Premier League that season, so they were halfway through the Premier League season. They'd literally played everybody that they could play. Said that was the hardest game that they'd had as a central defensive partnership against me and Steve Bull, 2 Championship centre forwards. So, that was a big compliment, and I can only imagine actually that we were a bit of a nightmare to play against, to be fair, because neither of us really stopped.
We will come back to some FA Cup memories in just a second. Just to kind of wrap it up with the chat, I guess, about Mark McGee and kind of what happened through that period, because it became a tumultuous time at the football club, and there was a brilliant quote that I picked out when we were doing the research for you coming in, and it was kind of what happened after obviously you finished 3rd and lost to Palace in the playoff semi-finals, and Sir Jack wasn't very happy with
I think
that
I know what's
outcome.
coming here.
Yeah, and by Barnes, being pipped by Barnsley to the automatic promotion, and he said, "They see me as the golden tit on which the pair of them can suck whenever they want more money for yet another transfer." This is talking about Mark McGee and Jonathan, his son, who was chairman at the time. "It's blackmail. The manager will blackmail my son, Jonathan, the chairman. He will blackmail me when he phones me abroad. It's always the same. The manager says to the chairman that he must have a player to strengthen the side. When we phone another club and say we're interested in one of their players, the price goes up 3 times because it's Wolves. They laugh like a drain. We buy a player far in excess of what he's worth."
I'm glad Graham Taylor bought me then.
But did that sum up at the time?
Well, look,
The club spent a lot of money.
They did, and when a reporter, if you catch somebody at the right time, you can get reactions like that, And where managers and players are concerned, it might be straight after a game. But clearly, we just missed out on promotion. Clearly, the investment that Sir Jack had made, he was entitled to feel frustrated. And only he knows what conversations he had with Jonathan and with Mark McGee. So, you can hear the frustration that is born in that statement there. It was one of those days. Look, Wolves were a club that had been in the old 4th division, in the 3rd division, into the Championship, and were a little bit stuck in the Championship, And then Sir Jack arrived, and he built this magnificent stadium and started setting things up to give Wolves the best possible opportunity to get promoted back into the Premier League, which is where this great football club belongs. And when it didn't quite happen, it is bound to be frustrating. And because Graham Taylor, former England manager, had been the manager, we had more national press down here than there were at some Premier League games, simply because it was Graham Taylor. Simply, and I say this with a heavy heart, because they wanted Graham Taylor to fail so that they could give Graham Taylor... He was a target for the press. Let's not beat about the bush or kid ourselves here. Obviously, later on in life, he got the respect that he actually should have had all the way through his career. But straight out of England, into Wolves, media focus, Sir Jack's money, of course, you're going to have to pay a premium for players because it's business. And the other chairman and the other owners saw Wolves coming, didn't they? And the particular season that you're talking about, I think, was it January, we brought in about 6 or 7 players, Robbie Slater, I remember Steve Claridge, and players like that, a couple of foreign lads that I hadn't heard of, and so on and so forth. And actually, it's hard enough bringing in new players and integrating them anyway to make a success. But to do it halfway through a season is probably even more hard, because you've got less time on the training ground as you have in pre-season, where you can get them all together and try and create a structure that's going to take you forward in the season. So going back to the statement, we all heard it. I think the rest of the world probably were profoundly amused by it, but it was Sir Jack just almost saying enough, and I don't believe it was too long before he called time on the whole thing.
Yeah. You said about Claridge coming in there. What's your thoughts on the fans' views of the team selection for the semi-final?
Oh, hang on. We're stepping ahead here. So we've got to talk about the FA Cup. This is what Looms is referencing, because he knows, because I've been badgering him about this morning. So the FA Cup run of 1998 is synonymous, I guess, with kind of the big high of Mark McGee's time and yourself being there. And you've already had the high of the Leeds game, which we'll talk about and we might come to on the podcast afterwards. But what Looms is referencing is lots of people who've messaged us in saying you got to the FA Cup semi-final and Mark McGee doesn't pick Steve Bull and Robbie Keane. Are you aware of how much fans are annoyed about that? Not necessarily you, by the way.
No, I think that it would only become evident once we didn't get the result that you wanted, and then it's like any game, but this is one of the biggest games, wasn't it, at the time? That was Sir Jack's dream, wasn't it, to get to the FA Cup final, to get to Wembley, playing an FA Cup. So it became more of a talking point after the game, really. I mean, that Arsenal team was sensational. Let's not beat about the bush here. We had a 10-minute period after half-time where we caused them a few problems. But other than that, the other 80 minutes, they were in total control, despite the fact they only beat us 1-0. My thing, from a purely selfish personal point of view, was why on earth he brought me off when I was the one...
Yeah.
I think Ron Atkinson was commentating at the time, and he was absolutely staggered. I was the one getting, causing them the most...
That's another one where the fans used. They were very surprised by that.
Kevin Turner said Mark McGee dropped an almighty clanger, taking off Don Goodman and replacing him with Steve Bull, instead of taking somebody else off and going with the two of them up top.
I would agree with that. I was dumbfounded, really. But then I suppose, going back to the very start of some of your questioning about subconsciously, was that a decision that was made because he and I didn't particularly get on at that point? We get on great now, for the record. Let's again, just to reiterate, but at that time we had a bit of a fractious relationship. So was there an element of that? It's a hard one. It's a hard one to swallow, really. The truth told, and again, I spoke earlier about being realistic. It probably wouldn't have mattered what team was put out that day. Arsenal were just that good, And I say that with a hint of regret, but maybe we could have given them perhaps a bit more of a game. But you always felt that they had more gears to go through, if truth be told.
Well, these are just some of the messages that came in. Jackie Oatley, that you'll know, that listens to the podcast. Indeed. Hi, Jackie. Said, overriding memory was Bull and Keane on the bench as they were totally outplayed, even though only 1-0. Massive anticlimax. But Goodman winner versus his boyhood club at Ellen Road. Better memory, she says, until my Fiat Uno broke down afterwards. Joe Bly said, Leeds away in the quarter-final. Thought we'd blown it when they got the penalty. Then the sheer delight when it was saved. Credit to Hans Sagers.
Absolutely.
Carl Whitehouse taking my dad to his first away game against Leeds, where he enjoyed himself after seeing Don Goodman getting the winner and also seeing Hans Sagers saving the penalty. He was so overjoyed in what happened that day. Wolves Ian, I had a lift up and was sweating on getting back in time because one of my dogs was running at Monmore on the night. I'd backed us to win and Goodman to score, pocketed over £1,000 as a result. What a day.
I didn't remember getting the commission through the post.
I mean, that day out for the fans at Ellen Road, for you, I say, it might explain why Leeds fans don't like you very much.
Well, it wasn't just that goal. I actually scored for Bradford City, for West Bromwich Albion, for Sunderland, and ultimately for Wolves. Every time I played against Leeds, I scored. It was their punishment for them, you see. So we've all got clubs where you step on a pitch and you really fancy that you're going to score. Your favourite clubs, you scored more goals against one particular club than any other club. And Leeds were one of my 2 or 3 clubs. So, look, it was such a dramatic day. I mean, they were a top Premier League team. George Graham, they were top 6 Premier League back in 1998. George Graham, Harry Kewell, Jimmy Floyd Hasselman. They were laden with internationals. It was on their home patch. We were halfway up the Championship and we weren't given a chance. And that was what the FA Cup was all about. Even still in 1998. It's less like that, unfortunately, now. But I grew up, getting up at 9 o'clock and watching the whole day, the build-up, the teams. I mean, the first time they took a camera on the team bus, it was like, whoa, and camera into the pre-match meal and so on and so forth. So it was all, the FA Cup is what I'm saying, it was just enormous. So to go back to the club that I loved in the quarter-final, and we acquitted ourselves really, really well. They didn't cause us too many problems. And then we nicked a goal, and the drama, as you've just rightly pointed out, didn't finish there because young Robbie Keane, what he was doing back there, I don't know, but legged up Jimmy Floyd. And then there was the headbutt, if you recall, between Curly and Jimmy Floyd. I think that was after the miss, but after Hans had saved it. And then for all the joy and everything, there was actually a little bit of horror afterwards for some of the Wolves fans. Lots of coaches got bricked and things like that. But in purely footballing terms, it was a special day, and it was my obviously most special day in a Wolves shirt.
You said there about the FA Cup, obviously quarter-final, semi-final, quarter-final of the League Cup. Was the team better suited for the Cup, or was that a distraction for the league form?
I don't think so. Again, I'll hark back. You're talking 20 years ago. The Cups meant more.
Massive, yeah.
They meant more than what they mean now. And when we watched quarter-finals of the FA Cup last night, and you see, I don't think Jamie Vardy started for Leicester. No. Why? Why is Jamie Vardy not starting for Leicester? They're not going to win the Premier League. They're probably not going to get in a European place. They're not going to get relegated. Why is Jamie Vardy not starting in the quarter-final of the League Cup? So and Manchester City's team reflected their priorities, and you kind of understand that. But it's just football has changed. And the big clubs like Manchester City have literally 2 brilliant teams, don't they? So they can change. But why aren't Leicester having a go? Yeah.
But your team came so close to that special moment, that big final appearance, and that semi-final. And I think the reason why so many fans feel so deflated over the team selection and everything around it is that it was a real opportunity.
It was a real
the
opportunity.
old Wembley.
Yeah, and again, I think that several of the players that had been brought in literally a few weeks before were in the team, and maybe the supporters hadn't identified with those players or didn't have that unity and bond with those players than they had with the ones that had been there on the journey. So it was a difficult one. Like I said, you pick a team to win a game, to do a job, and clearly Mark McGee felt, for whatever reason, that the team he put out would be the one that would be best equipped to maybe nullify Arsenal, hit them on the counter, try and nick a goal and nick a 1-0. Of course, it just didn't work out that way.
We're going to do our rundown feature on the Podcast Extra, which you can download in all the usual places. Just to finish off on our Facebook and YouTube show, the young Robbie Keane had come through that year, and you end up leaving in the summer after that. How much of it was down to the fact that suddenly there is this kid who is incredibly talented?
I'll be controversial if you like. It was down to the fact that I didn't get on with Mark McGee. I scored a load of goals in those last sort of, 8-10 games. I had all the Molineux crowd singing, sign him up. It was well protracted that my contract was up, I was still offering goals to the team and was of value. So it was nothing to do with Robbie Keane. And to this day, Mark McGee asked me to notify him if somebody came in. I duly did. When I did that when the Japanese offer came in. Mark said he'd get back to me, and he never did.
But do you not feel that because he had Robbie Keane?
Now, that might be a reason. That might be a reason. Again, go back to the right way and wrong way of doing things. If you don't want a player or whatever, just say thanks for your time and all that. We're going to move on or whatever. But to phone me up and say, keep me posted if there's any interest, and we'll see what we can do. Blah 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 blah, and then not get back. That was a disappointing thing. Again, do you know what? It's water under the bridge. Mark McGee and I, again, to reiterate, are absolutely fine. We bump into each other quite a bit. So, and we've got a decent relationship now. So, water under the bridge. But at the time, obviously, it was one of those things. And off I went to Japan, where I was big in Japan.
I bet you are. We'll talk about that maybe on our podcast extra coming very shortly. Thank you very much for watching.
Cheers.
The Old Gold Club, powered by Wolverhampton Building Supplies, with Mikey Burrows and Chris Iwelumo.